Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, about 4,500 years, to a place where the sun wasn't just a friendly orb in the sky, but a relentless, unforgiving master, beating down on vast, shimmering expanses of sand and rock. Imagine waking up not to the gentle hum of your refrigerator or the distant clang of a garbage truck, but to the harsh bleating of a goat, the reek of unwashed bodies, and the distant, rhythmic thud of mallet on stone. You're in ancient Egypt, not as a pharaoh, mind you, nor as a high priest or even a scribe with a cushy job drawing hieroglyphs. Oh no, you're here to build a tomb, a monumental, eternal resting place for a god king. And let me tell you, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first morning on this job hits you like a blast furnace. The air, even at what passes for dawn, is thick and dry, tasting of dust and something vaguely metallic. You squint against the glare, a sun already climbing with an alarming speed, promising a day of relentless heat that would make your modern air conditioner weep. You glance around, a tremor of unease rippling through you. This isn't just a construction site. It's an entire ecosystem of human toil, dust, and an almost tangible sense of oppressive grandeur. The scale of everything is the first thing that truly overwhelms you. You've seen pictures of the pyramids, maybe even dreamed of visiting them, but seeing the actual raw material for one, a mountain of limestone waiting to be carved, is a different beast entirely. It's like looking at the Grand Canyon and being told you need to dig it out with a spoon, or perhaps a chisel if you're lucky. You're not just building a pyramid, mind you, or a simple burial chamber. You're constructing an eternal monument designed to defy time itself, a beacon for the pharaoh's journey into the afterlife. And you, my friend, are one of thousands, a tiny cog in an impossibly vast machine. You'd arrived here, perhaps conscripted from your village, or maybe you sought work out of desperation, lured by the promise of 3 meals a day, a significant upgrade from your usual fare, which might have been 3 meals a week. That promise, you'll soon find, comes with a rather hefty price tag, paid in sweat, blood, and the rapid deterioration of your body. The sheer volume of material needed is mind-boggling. Mainstream historical fact time. The Great Pyramid of Giza alone, the one built for Pharaoh Khufu, contains an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing on average 2.5 to 15 tons. Yes, that's tons, plural. Imagine trying to move just one of your kitchen appliances without a dolly. Now multiply that by a few thousand, and then add a few more zeros for good measure. That's the kind of project you've signed up for, willingly or otherwise. And it's not just about moving them. It's about finding them, extracting them, shaping them, and then lifting them hundreds of feet into the sky. You gaze at the distant, shimmering outline of a half-completed structure, and it looks less like a building and more like a primordial mountain, slowly, painstakingly being sculpted by human hands. It's hard not to feel a sudden, profound sense of futility. You might think, what am I, a mere mortal, doing here, trying to build something for a god? Well, friend, you're about to find out, mostly by having your back ache in ways you never knew possible. The environmental conditions are another immediate shock. The air is so dry it feels like it's sucking the moisture right out of your lungs with every breath. Your throat is already scratchy, your lips starting to crack. The sun isn't merely hot. It's an entity, an omnipresent force that seems determined to bake you alive. There's no shade, no air conditioning, no icy cold drinks. Just the relentless, unfiltered glare bouncing off the light-colored limestone. You'll quickly learn that proper hydration is not a luxury, but a desperate, constant battle. A quirky tidbit you might find interesting, though it won't help you much. Ancient Egyptians sometimes used a form of sand-filled water filters to clarify their drinking water, but good luck getting access to one of those on the construction site. You're more likely to be drinking whatever gets hauled in, often silty and lukewarm. The ground beneath your worn sandals is uneven, a mix of compacted sand, sharp rock fragments, and the ever-present dust that coats everything. Your clothes, already grimy from your journey, feel heavy and suffocating. You notice that many of the other workers, their faces already etched with fatigue, seem to move with a slow, deliberate shuffle, conserving energy. You might still have some youthful vigor, but it's quickly evaporating under the brutal sun. You try to take a deep breath, but the dust catches in your throat, triggering a cough. It's not just an inconvenience. It's a constant irritant that will slowly, insidiously, begin to erode your respiratory system. Imagine working in a perpetually dusty attic for years, but the attic is outdoors under a magnifying glass. Historians still argue whether the workforce was composed primarily of slaves, skilled laborers, or corvée labor, seasonal conscription. But for you, standing there, gazing at the endless, daunting task ahead, the distinction feels somewhat academic. You're here, you're working, and you're not leaving until the pharaoh's eternal home is finished, or until you're finished, whichever comes first. And frankly, looking at the sheer impossibility of it all, you're betting on the latter. The silence, broken only by the distant sounds of chipping and shouting, is almost as unnerving as the heat. It's the silence of immense, unyielding labor, of a world utterly indifferent to your comfort or survival. You might have dreamed of adventure, of seeing the world, but this is less an adventure and more a grim, monumental undertaking designed to break every part of you. Welcome to your new life. It's going to be a long day and a much, much longer career. Your first day at the tomb construction site is a brutal immersion, but as the relentless sun begins its slow, arduous climb towards its zenith, a familiar ache settles into your bones, reminding you of the journey that brought you here. It wasn't exactly a first-class ticket, was it? You recall the days, perhaps even weeks, spent trudging across the unforgiving landscape, each step a testament to the sheer physical effort required to simply exist in this era. No air-conditioned buses, no smooth asphalt roads, certainly no in-flight entertainment. Just you, your worn sandals, and the interminable horizon shimmering under an indifferent sky. The memory still makes your feet throb, a phantom pain from the endless miles. You were part of a motley procession, a long, snaking line of individuals, some young and desperate like yourself, others older, their faces already carved with the lines of hardship, their shoulders bowed by years of similar labor. Dust was your constant companion, clinging to your eyelashes, settling into the creases of your skin, coating your tongue so that even a sip of water felt gritty. You probably thought you understood dry before this journey, but this was a whole new level of parched. It was the kind of dry that made your throat feel like sandpaper and your skin crack, a preview, perhaps, of the relentless dehydration that would become a daily struggle here. Travel was less about moving from point A to point B and more about enduring the journey itself. You walked, oh how you walked, day after day, sunrise to sunset, the landscape blurring into an endless vista of sand, rock, and the occasional thorny acacia tree. You might have envied the occasional donkey laden with supplies, but even those poor beasts looked miserable, their heads low, their ears flicking at the persistent flies. If you were really lucky, part of your journey might have involved a riverboat, a slow, creaking vessel navigating the currents of the Nile. Mainstream historical fact alert. For the ancient Egyptians, the Nile wasn't just a river. It was the highway, the lifeblood of the nation, and the primary means of transporting colossal stone blocks from distant quarries to the construction sites. But for you, the journey to the boat, or entirely by foot if you weren't near a navigable stretch, was often the hardest part. You'd imagine lying on the deck of a boat, gently swaying, and dream of it as a luxury cruise, only to be jolted back to the reality of the scorching sun and the cramped, unhygienic conditions on board. Nights offered little reprieve. You slept under the vast, star-dusted canopy, the ground your bed, a meager blanket your only comfort against the surprising chill that descended once the sun had dipped below the horizon. The silence was immense, broken only by the chirping of insects, the distant howl of a jackal, or the rustling of something unseen in the darkness. You learned quickly to shake out your sandals before putting them on, a crucial habit to avoid an unpleasant and potentially lethal encounter with a scorpion or snake. Nobody carried a flashlight, obviously, so stumbling in the dark was common, often resulting in stubbed toes or a sprained ankle, injuries that, back then, could easily spell the end of your ability to work and thus your life. No workers' comp here, I'm afraid. Food on the journey was sparse and monotonous. Flatbread, dried fish, maybe some onions or garlic. It was sustenance, not a meal to be savored. You quickly learned to appreciate every crumb, every drop of water, understanding that waste meant weakness, and weakness meant vulnerability. There was no grab-and-go deli on every corner, no vending machines dispensing sugary drinks. Your energy levels were a constant, precarious balance, always teetering on the edge of exhaustion. You probably missed your mom's cooking something fierce, even if it was just lentil stew. Oh, for a nice warm bowl of gruel, you might have thought, which, if you think about it, is a pretty depressing aspiration. Beyond the physical discomfort, there were dangers. Bandits were a real threat on less traveled routes, preying on those who looked weak or carried any meager possessions. You learned to stick with the larger groups, to keep your eyes open, to trust no one too easily. Disease, too, was an ever-present companion. Dysentery could sweep through a group like wildfire, turning a difficult journey into a death march. One light joke for you: you probably developed a sixth sense for spotting the cleanest-looking water source, even if it was just less muddy than the alternative. You probably had a running internal monologue of, "Is this going to kill me? Probably. Oh well, worth the risk for hydration." You might wonder how you ended up on this path. Perhaps you were a farmer, conscripted during the inundation season when the Nile flooded the fields, leaving little agricultural work. This corvée labor, a form of state-mandated service, was a common way for the pharaoh to gather a massive workforce. Or maybe, desperate times called for desperate measures, and the promise of regular rations, however meager, outweighed the fear of the unknown. Historians still argue whether the recruitment was always voluntary or how consistently workers were compensated beyond basic sustenance. But for you, it was simple. You were told to come or you had no other choice. The whole journey felt like a crucible, designed to strip away any lingering softness, any modern notions of comfort or personal space. You lived cheek by jowl with strangers, sharing the same air, the same meager rations, the same silent dread of what awaited at the journey's end. Personal hygiene was a luxury, rarely indulged. A quick splash of Nile water if you were lucky enough to pass it. Otherwise, you just got progressively grimier. You probably developed a personal scent that could clear a room in modern times. But here, you just blend right in. It makes you chuckle ruefully to imagine the look on a modern person's face if they had to shower ancient Egyptian style. It involved a lot of scraping and not much bubbly soap. This grueling odyssey, a relentless test of endurance, was merely the overture. Every blister, every ache, every moment of thirst, every dust-filled breath was, in hindsight, preparation. It was the ancient world's way of saying, "Welcome to the show, kid. Hope you like it rough." because the reality you're about to discover is that the journey was just the warm-up act. The actual construction site, that's where the real performance begins, where the stakes are life and death, and where your ability to last even a single day will be put to the ultimate, brutal test. Your initial awe at the grandeur of the project quickly fades, replaced by a growing awareness of the sheer, soul-crushing effort required, an effort for which your arduous trek was merely a grim, necessary apprenticeship. The arduous journey that delivered you to the tomb construction site was just the overture, a taste of the relentless physical demands that would define your new existence. Now, as the sun beats down with an almost malicious intent, you realize that the struggle isn't just about the work itself, but about the very fabric of your daily life. Forget your cozy bed, your well-stocked fridge, your access to clean running water. Here, daily existence is a monotonous struggle against scarcity, squalor, and an almost constant gnawing hunger. Your home is a small, cramped hut, part of a sprawling workers' village that springs up around the monumental project like a fungal growth. These dwellings are made of sun-dried mud brick, offering little insulation from the brutal daytime heat or the surprising nighttime chill. You share this tiny space with several other men, probably more than a dozen, packed in so tightly that turning over at night without elbowing someone is a minor miracle. Personal space is a concept alien to this era, as alien as a smartphone or a climate-controlled environment. You quickly learn to ignore the snores, the coughs, the restless shifting of bodies around you. Privacy, that's a joke the universe plays on you, usually when you desperately need to scratch an itch in an awkward spot. Food, the promised benefit that lured you here, turns out to be less a feast and more a functional necessity. Your daily rations consist primarily of emmer wheat, used to bake coarse bread, and barley, which can be brewed into a thick, low-alcohol beer. This beer isn't for recreation. It's a vital source of calories and hydration, often safer to drink than the unreliable water. You might also get some onions, garlic, or a few dried fish if you're lucky. Meat is a rare luxury, reserved for special occasions or higher-ranking officials. Mainstream historical fact: analysis of human remains from ancient Egyptian workers' villages confirms that their diet was primarily carbohydrate-based, supplemented by protein from fish and legumes. You'll become intimately familiar with the texture of gritty bread and the taste of sour beer. Variety is not on the menu, and gourmet dining is an absurd fantasy. You eat the same thing day in, day out, often sitting on the ground, sharing a communal bowl. There's no cutlery, just your calloused hands. The lack of proper nutrition will slowly but surely take its toll on your body. You'll feel perpetually drained, your muscles aching, your bones feeling brittle. Your teeth, too, will suffer from the grit in the bread, a common ailment among ancient Egyptians. Imagine chewing on sandpaper every day, and you're getting close to the experience. A quirky tidbit: some analyses suggest that ancient Egyptian beer, while nutritious, often contained traces of various molds and bacteria due to primitive brewing techniques, which sometimes contributed to gut issues. So, your daily pint might be giving you a bit more than just calories. You might even find yourself dreaming of a crisp, cold soda from a convenience store, a beverage so utterly alien to this world it's comical. Water is a precious commodity, constantly in short supply, especially at sites far from the Nile. It's hauled in by workers, often from considerable distances, in large pottery jars. Every drop is rationed. You quickly learn to quench your thirst with the bare minimum, saving every sip, knowing that dehydration is a swift and brutal killer. You'll watch others collapse, not from injury, but from sheer lack of fluid, their bodies simply giving up under the relentless sun. The fear of thirst is a constant companion, a dry knot in your stomach. Historians still argue whether water supply was consistently adequate at all sites, or if certain periods or locations suffered from chronic shortages. But for you, it's not an academic debate. It's a daily, desperate calculation. Hygiene is another lost concept. Bathing is infrequent, if it happens at all, and is often limited to a quick wash in a communal trough or a dip in the Nile if the site is close enough and deemed safe from crocodiles. Your clothes, probably a simple linen kilt or tunic, are rarely washed. They become stiff with sweat, dust, and grime, clinging uncomfortably to your skin. The air in your hut is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, stale sweat, and cooking fires. Flies are everywhere, buzzing around your face, landing on your food, a persistent, irritating nuisance that carries disease. One light joke. You'll quickly develop an immunity to personal odor, mostly because everyone else smells just as bad. So you'll just blend right in with the human-scented landscape. It's like a perpetual outdoor locker room that never airs out. Sleep, when it comes, is restless and often interrupted. The hard ground, the cramped space, the constant itching from insect bites, and the ever-present anxiety about the next day's labor conspire against deep slumber. You wake up feeling as tired as when you lay down, your body protesting the endless cycle of toil and inadequate rest. Your dreams, if you have any, are probably of water, cool and clean, or perhaps of a plate piled high with food you can't quite identify. Beyond the physical discomforts, there's the mental toll of this monotonous, grueling existence. Every day is the same. Wake before dawn, eat your meager ration, trudge to the work site, labor until sunset, return to your hut, eat another meager ration, and collapse. There's no entertainment, no distractions beyond the occasional shared story or a game of checkers if you're truly lucky and someone brought a board. Hope becomes a precious, dwindling resource. You learn to live in the moment, focusing on the simple task at hand, blocking out the larger, overwhelming picture of the mountain you're trying to move. Your social life, if you can call it that, revolves around your immediate hutmates and fellow laborers. You form bonds of necessity, sharing complaints, commiserating over aches and pains. These are the people who will help you if you fall, who will share their last sip of water if you're truly parched. But even these relationships are forged in hardship, tempered by desperation. You'll witness acts of kindness, but also moments of cruelty, born out of the relentless pressure and scarcity. This daily reality, a slow grind of privation and discomfort, is designed to strip you down to your most basic instincts: survival. It's a testament to the immense power of the pharaoh and the belief system that underpinned this society that so many endured such conditions for so long. You're not just building a tomb, you're living a life designed by the pharaoh, for the pharaoh, where your personal comfort is utterly irrelevant. You are merely a tool, a flesh and blood instrument in a monumental undertaking. And every sunrise brings with it the grim realization that the cycle begins anew, demanding more from your already depleted body and spirit. The simple act of putting one foot in front of the other, of lifting your hand to chew a piece of bread, becomes a Herculean effort. And the knowledge that this is your life, day after endless day, is perhaps the heaviest burden of all. After the wearying journey and the stark reality of your squalid living conditions, you might think you've seen the worst of ancient Egyptian tomb construction. But you haven't even really begun the work. Your introduction to the actual labor starts not with chisels and polished stone, but with the earth-shattering brutality of quarrying. This isn't your backyard rock garden. This is raw, untamed stone, ripped from the very bones of the earth. Imagine standing at the edge of a massive quarry, the sheer scale of the rock face dwarfing you, making you feel utterly insignificant. The air here isn't just dusty. It's a perpetual haze of pulverized limestone, fine as flour, yet abrasive as sandpaper. Every breath you take scrapes your throat, and your nostrils are constantly clogged with a gritty film. Mainstream historical fact: the Egyptians primarily quarried limestone, sandstone, and granite for their monumental structures. The nearest quarry might be miles away, or, for the truly massive stones like those of Aswan granite, hundreds of miles upriver, requiring immense logistical feats to transport. But for you, right now, it's about extracting what's in front of you. Your tools are rudimentary, brutal extensions of your own physical strength. You're handed a heavy dolerite hammer, a harder stone used to pound and chip away at the softer limestone. There are no power drills, no pneumatic hammers, no dynamite. Just brute force, applied relentlessly, hour after hour, under the unblinking eye of the sun. You swing the hammer, feeling the jarring impact travel up your arm, rattling your teeth. The sound is deafening, a rhythmic, monotonous cacophony of thousands of hammers striking stone, punctuated by shouts and the occasional groan. It's a symphony of suffering, played out under a scorching sun. The technique for extracting blocks is painstakingly slow and incredibly demanding. Workers would often use a method called undercutting or channel cutting. You'd essentially be carving deep trenches around the desired block, then driving in wooden wedges. A quirky tidbit: these wedges would then be soaked with water. As the wood absorbed the water, it would swell, exerting immense pressure on the rock, eventually causing the block to crack along the desired line. Simple, ingenious, and agonizingly slow. This process required incredible precision, immense strength, and endless patience. It meant hours spent in cramped, awkward positions, hammering away at rock, often with dust blinding your eyes and sweat stinging them. The dust isn't just an irritant, it's a silent killer. Fine silica particles, released from the rock as you hammer and chip, are inhaled deep into your lungs. You cough constantly, a dry, hacking cough that never quite goes away. This isn't a cold. It's the insidious onset of silicosis, a debilitating lung disease that would slowly choke the life out of you. Over time, your breathing would become labored, your chest tight, your energy levels plummeting even further. You wouldn't know the name of the disease, of course, but you'd see its effects all around you. The gaunt faces, the wheezing breaths, the slow, agonizing decline of your fellow workers. One light joke: your lungs, if they could talk, would be sending you very strongly worded emails about unionizing. Beyond the dust, the quarry is a dangerous place. Rock falls are a constant threat. A poorly judged hammer blow, a hidden fissure, a sudden tremor in the earth. Any of these could send tons of rock crashing down, crushing anyone beneath. You learn to keep an eye on the overhead rock face, to listen for the subtle creaks and groans of the stone, to react instantly. But accidents happen. A slipping hammer could shatter your hand. A falling shard could blind an eye. A misplaced step could send you tumbling down a steep incline. A broken limb in this environment isn't just painful. It's often a death sentence. There's no modern emergency room, no skilled surgeons waiting to set your bones. You'd be lucky to get a splint made of rough wood and a prayer. The heat in the quarry is magnified by the exposed rock, which absorbs and radiates the sun's energy, turning the air into a tangible wave of shimmering distortion. You work bare-chested under the sun, your skin quickly baking to a leathery, cracked texture. Sunburn isn't just uncomfortable. It's a serious burn that can blister and become infected. And infections, in this unsanitary environment, are another fast track to the afterlife. Hydration, as we discussed, is crucial, but water is never enough, never quite cool enough. You feel your body slowly dehydrating, your head pounding, your vision blurring at the edges. You might also be involved in creating the ramps that would later be used to transport the blocks out of the quarry. This involves moving colossal amounts of debris, leveling ground, and constructing temporary inclines. It's a full-body workout that leaves every muscle screaming in protest. Your hands, initially soft, would quickly become a mass of calluses, blisters, and cuts, perpetually grimy with rock dust and dried blood. Historians still argue whether some quarry sites were primarily operated by specialized, permanent crews or if the general corvée labor was rotated through these incredibly demanding tasks. For you, it doesn't matter. You're here now, and the work demands everything you have, and then some. You quickly lose track of time, your world shrinking to the rhythm of the hammer, the sweat in your eyes, the burning in your lungs. The only goal is to complete your assigned quota, to survive the day, and to avoid the watchful eye of the overseer, whose impatience can lead to swift and painful consequences. The quarry isn't just a place of work, it's a grinder of bodies and spirits. It strips away any romantic notions you might have had about ancient civilizations, replacing them with the raw, brutal truth of human effort. You might even find a grim satisfaction in the sheer enormity of what you are collectively achieving, chipping away at mountains. But that pride is quickly overshadowed by the constant aches, the pervasive dust, and the very real fear of what tomorrow's sun will bring. Your back screams, your arms ache, and every part of you longs for the brief respite of darkness, knowing that the next morning, the rock will still be there, waiting for your hammer. And so, the endless, brutal dance with stone continues. Having survived the quarry, a grim badge of honor now etched into your aching muscles and dust-choked lungs, you might think the hardest part is over. Oh, if only that were true. The true monumental challenge, the one that truly defined ancient Egyptian engineering and willpower, was not just extracting those gargantuan stones, but moving them. You're about to discover what it truly means to move mountains, by hand, with the most rudimentary of tools, and an almost suicidal disregard for human physical limits. Imagine a block of stone, freshly hewn, weighing perhaps 10, 20, even 50 tons. That's like trying to drag your entire house, or several full-size trucks, across rough terrain. There are no wheels, no internal combustion engines, no cranes. Your primary tools are ropes made of plant fibers, wooden sledges, and the sheer collective power of human muscle. Lots and lots of human muscle, and you, my friend, are now part of that muscle. You're assigned to a team, often hundreds strong, harnessing yourselves to thick ropes attached to a massive wooden sledge upon which a freshly quarried block rests. The ground beneath is uneven, sometimes deliberately wetted down to reduce friction, but mostly just raw earth, littered with small rocks and sand. Mainstream historical fact: it is widely accepted that the Egyptians used sledges, not wheeled vehicles, to transport the massive stone blocks. Evidence from ancient wall paintings and archaeological finds supports this method, often depicting workers dragging stones over specially prepared tracks or lubricated surfaces. The command rings out, a sharp, guttural shout from an overseer, and then the pull begins. Your muscles strain, protesting with every fiber. You lean forward, digging your feet into the earth, your back screaming in protest. It's a slow, agonizing crawl. The ropes cut into your shoulders. The effort is immense, immediate, and utterly draining. Every inch gained feels like a mile. The air is filled with grunts, groans, the creak of ropes, and the shouts of overseers urging you on. Your lungs burn, your head pounds, and sweat streams down your face, stinging your eyes. You're not just pulling. You're pouring every ounce of your being into moving an inanimate object that seems determined to stay put. Accidents are not just possibilities. They are inevitabilities. A rope snaps, sending dozens of men tumbling backward, often into one another, resulting in broken bones, concussions, or worse. A sledge could tip, crushing anyone unlucky enough to be in its path. A foot could slip on the slick, wetted ground, sending you sprawling under the weight of the moving stone. Or perhaps, the immense weight could simply dislodge a ramp support, triggering a cascade of falling rock and timber. A quick light joke, you'd probably develop a sixth sense for avoiding falling objects, or at least a very rapid prayer routine. Oh, bless this stone. Just don't let it bless me. The ramps you're dragging these behemoths up are often temporary constructions, built of earth, rubble, and timber. They're steep, unstable, and treacherous. Imagine trying to pull a concrete block weighing as much as a small bus up a dirt hill, with only ropes and sheer willpower. Every time the stone inches forward, there's a collective cheer, but it's quickly followed by the resumption of the agonizing pull. You're constantly fighting gravity, friction, and the sheer inertia of the stone. Sometimes water or even milk was poured under the sledges to lubricate the ground and reduce friction. A quirky tidbit, supported by archaeological evidence. A fascinating wall painting from the tomb of Jehudi Hotep depicts over 170 men pulling a colossal statue, with one man standing at the front pouring liquid onto the path in front of the sledge. This suggests they understood rudimentary principles of friction long before modern physics. While it sounds helpful, it also means the ground is often muddy and slippery, making it even harder to gain purchase with your feet. Your worn sandals offer little grip, and you're constantly fighting to keep your footing. The sun is your relentless tormentor. Working in the open, with no shade, the heat bakes you from above, while the ground radiates heat from below. Dehydration is a constant threat. Your tongue feels like sandpaper, your lips are cracked and bleeding, and your body cries out for water, which is always rationed and never quite enough. You learn to conserve every drop of sweat, a futile exercise, but one your body instinctively tries. Historians still argue about the exact methods used to build the ramps for the Great Pyramids, whether they were straight, spiral, or a combination. But for you, the debate is moot. Regardless of the ramp's geometry, the reality is the same. Immense physical effort, constant danger, and the ever-present threat of collapse. You learn to brace yourself, to anticipate the lurch and groan of the sledge, to synchronize your pull with hundreds of others, becoming a single, vast, straining organism. The social dynamics of the pulling teams are fascinatingly grim. There's an intense camaraderie born of shared suffering, but also fierce competition and the pressure from overseers wielding whips or sticks, ready to remind anyone who faltered that slacking was not an option. You might find a grim humor in the shared misery, a dark joke whispered under your breath about the weight of the pharaoh's ego, but mostly, you're just focused on the next breath, the next pull. This brutal work isn't just physically taxing, it's mentally soul-crushing. The monotony, the danger, the sheer impossibility of the task. You might find yourself staring at the distant, half-built tomb, wondering if it will ever be finished, if you will ever be finished. Your hands are raw, covered in splinters and rope burns. Your shoulders ache with a deep, persistent pain that no amount of rest seems to alleviate. Every joint, every muscle screams in protest. You probably come to dread the sound of the overseer's whistle, signaling the start of another shift of this back-breaking, lung-searing, mind-numbing labor. This isn't just work. It's a test of wills between man and the stone you often feel is winning. But slowly, inch by agonizing inch, the blocks move, pulled by the sheer, indomitable will of thousands of anonymous individuals, paving the way for the pharaoh's eternal journey, and perhaps your own early one. You've hauled the colossal stone blocks from the quarry, a Herculean feat that left you feeling like your spine had been replaced with a bag of broken pottery. But moving the raw material is only half the battle. Now comes the painstaking, incredibly precise, and still profoundly dangerous work of shaping and carving those rough-hewn giants into the perfectly fitted, impossibly smooth components of a pharaoh's eternal abode. This is where brute force meets delicate artistry, a meeting that often leaves fingers crushed and eyes blinded. You're no longer just a hauler. You're now a chipper, a dresser, or perhaps, if you show a knack for detail, even a rudimentary carver. Your tools have changed, but the danger has not. Instead of massive dolerite hammers for rough extraction, you now wield smaller copper chisels, mallets made of wood or stone, and abrasive sand. Copper is a relatively soft metal, so your chisels dull quickly, requiring constant sharpening, a task often done by specialized artisans, but you'll be familiar with the process of grinding them against harder stones. Mainstream historical fact: copper tools, sometimes hardened with arsenic, were the primary implements for cutting and shaping softer stones like limestone and sandstone. For harder stones like granite, they used dolerite pounders and abrasive sand for grinding and polishing. The work demands an astonishing level of precision. Each block has to fit seamlessly with its neighbors, creating perfectly level courses that would support the immense weight above. You sit or crouch for hours, chipping away, guided by plumb lines, measuring rods, and the keen eye of a master craftsman. One wrong strike, one moment of carelessness, and you could ruin a block, incurring the wrath of the overseer and potentially leading to a brutal punishment. Imagine trying to sculpt a perfect cube out of concrete, with only a small hammer and chisel, while under immense pressure and a blazing sun. And your sculpture has to fit perfectly into a larger, equally precise puzzle. The dust, oh, the dust! It's still your constant companion, but now it's finer, more insidious. As you chip and abrade the stone, a cloud of fine, crystalline dust rises, coating your skin, clinging to your eyelashes, and, most dangerously, filling your lungs with every shallow breath. This microscopic shrapnel slowly, relentlessly, destroys the delicate tissues of your respiratory system. Your cough becomes more persistent, more rattling. You're slowly choking on the very material you're working with. A quirky tidbit: some evidence suggests that ancient Egyptian stonemasons suffered from a high incidence of silicosis, a lung disease caused by inhaling silica dust, leading to greatly reduced lifespans. They literally breathed their work. Beyond the dust, the immediate physical dangers are manifold. A misplaced hammer blow could smash your thumb or fingers, turning them into a bloody mess. A chisel could slip, slicing through flesh or even embedding itself in your leg. Shards of stone, sharp as razors, can fly off, striking an eye and causing instant, permanent blindness. You see it happen to others: a sudden scream, a hand clapped over an eye, and then the quiet, grim reality of a life changed forever, often meaning the end of your usefulness on the construction site. No sight, no work, no food. A quick light joke. You might develop a habit of constantly blinking, less out of tiredness and more to dislodge the perpetual layer of grit from your eyeballs. Your eyes probably felt like they were perpetually exfoliating. Even the process of polishing the finished surfaces with abrasive sand, often mixed with water, creates its own hazards. While it might seem less violent than hammering, it requires hours of repetitive, strenuous rubbing, often in cramped, awkward positions. Your hands are raw, your joints ache, and the constant friction can lead to skin abrasions and infections. The sheer monotony of it could drive a person mad. Imagine spending your entire day rubbing a single piece of sandpaper against a rock. For years. That's your job. The precision required is truly staggering, especially for the interior chambers of the tombs. These aren't just rough passages. They are often adorned with intricate carvings, hieroglyphs, and detailed scenes. This work, usually performed by highly skilled artisans, is still done in low light, often by the flickering glow of oil lamps, in confined spaces where fresh air is scarce. While you might not be one of these elite carvers, you'll be responsible for preparing the surfaces for them, ensuring they are perfectly smooth and level. You'll be keenly aware that any imperfection in your work means more labor for you, or worse. Historians still argue about the exact methods used for surveying and achieving the astonishing accuracy of these monumental structures, particularly how they managed to align them so perfectly with cardinal directions and astronomical features. But for you, it's about the here and now, the small section of rock in front of you, and the relentless demand for perfection. You learn to read the stone, to anticipate its weaknesses, to gauge the precise force needed for each strike. It's a craft born of necessity and survival, not choice. The relentless sun beats down on the open-air workshops where much of this finishing work takes place. There's no respite, no shade, just the intense heat radiating off the rock and the blinding glare. Dehydration is a constant, insidious threat. You watch others succumb, their bodies simply giving out under the combined assault of heat, dust, and unending physical exertion. They are simply dragged away, and the work continues. There's no time for mourning, only for moving on. You're not just building a monument, you're becoming part of it piece by agonizing piece. Your sweat, your blood, the very dust from your lungs are all incorporated into the stone. An unseen, uncredited contribution to the pharaoh's eternal glory. The work of carving and shaping is a brutal, relentless grind that slowly but surely chips away at your body, just as you chip away at the stone. Your hands, once perhaps soft and nimble, become gnarled, scarred, and strong, forever marked by the unforgiving embrace of rock and hammer. And as you toil, the massive blocks, now perfectly squared and smoothed, await their final journey upwards, a new challenge that will test your remaining strength to its absolute limit. You've been introduced to the brutal reality of the quarry and the painstaking, dangerous work of carving. But even with the threat of silicosis looming in your lungs and the constant fear of a crushed limb, there's an omnipresent force on the tomb construction site even more immediate, even more chilling: the overseer's whip. Discipline here isn't a suggestion. It's a brutal, undeniable fact of life, enforced by men who wield not just authority, but physical pain as their primary tool. Imagine the work site, a teeming hive of activity, constantly punctuated by the sharp crack of a whip. This isn't a gentle tap on the shoulder. This is a deliberate, cutting lash designed to inflict pain, to humiliate, and most importantly, to keep you moving. You learn to recognize the specific thwack of the leather, the way it slices through the air, and you instinctively flinch even if it's not directed at you. It's a constant auditory reminder of your place in this rigid hierarchy. At the very bottom, the overseers or foremen are often chosen from the ranks of the more robust or long-serving workers, or perhaps even from a lower noble class. They are the direct link between the monumental ambition of the pharaoh and the raw human muscle that brings it to life. Their job is simple: ensure maximum output, maintain order, and tolerate no idleness or dissent. They walk among the workers, their eyes constantly scanning, their faces grim, ever alert for any perceived slackening of effort. Mainstream historical fact: ancient Egyptian texts and depictions show that foremen and overseers were common figures on large construction projects, tasked with managing work gangs and ensuring productivity. Their methods of persuasion are direct and often brutal. A slow pace, a moment of rest too long, a whispered complaint, any of these could earn you a swift, agonizing blow. The whip isn't just for encouragement, it's a punishment. Lashes could tear skin, leave welts, and cause deep bruising. It's not about correcting technique. It's about inflicting pain as a deterrent. And the pain isn't just physical. It's also psychological. Being publicly flogged, even for a minor infraction, strips away any semblance of dignity, grinding down your spirit along with your body. One light joke: you'd probably develop an uncanny ability to look busy even when you're technically doing nothing, a sort of ancient Egyptian efficiency expert in avoiding the whip. Beyond the whip, other punishments are common. Being deprived of water or food rations for a period, however short, can be a death sentence in this environment. Being assigned to the most dangerous or physically demanding tasks, like pulling the heaviest stones on the steepest ramps, is another form of punitive measure. Or, for more serious infractions like theft or attempted escape, the punishment could be disfigurement, such as the chopping off of a hand or foot, or even death. The message is clear: your life and your body are not your own. They belong to the pharaoh and the project. The system relies on fear, pure and simple. You work not just for sustenance, but to avoid pain. The constant threat hangs over you like the scorching sun, driving you forward, pushing you beyond your limits. You learn to suppress your exhaustion, to ignore the burning in your muscles, to stifle the cough that racks your lungs. To appear weak is to invite the attention of the overseer, and that's attention you desperately want to avoid. A quirky tidbit: while some Egyptologists point to evidence of relatively good treatment of skilled artisans and even strikes by workers for better conditions, like the one recorded at Deir el-Medina, this generally applied to a more specialized workforce, not the vast majority of conscripted laborers on the larger, more brutal projects. For the average, muscle-bound worker on a massive pyramid site, the realities were far grimmer and the lash far more common. So, don't expect a union representative to come to your aid here. Historians still argue about the extent and frequency of violence used against the workforce. While some scholars emphasize the role of religious devotion and a sense of national pride in motivating workers, others highlight the coercive nature of corvée labor and the inherent brutality of such large-scale projects without modern human rights considerations. But for you, the debate is irrelevant. You feel the sting of the sun, the ache in your bones, and the ever-present threat of the whip, which makes any theoretical discussion about motivation seem absurd. This constant threat shapes your interactions with your fellow workers. There's a shared sense of oppression, a silent understanding. You witness acts of brutality against others, and you look away, not out of callousness, but out of self-preservation. To intervene is to invite the same fate. It's a grim calculus of survival. You learn to rely on silent signals, on shared glances, on the unspoken language of misery. The psychological toll of this constant surveillance and fear is immense. It erodes your sense of self, your agency. You become a cog, a tool, your entire existence defined by the demands of the project. Your spirit, once perhaps bright with youthful dreams, is slowly ground down by the monotony and the ever-present threat of pain. You dream of escape, but where would you go? The desert stretches endlessly, and the pharaoh's reach is vast. So you push on, another swing of the hammer, another pull on the rope, another slow, agonizing inch towards completion. Your body is a machine, fueled by meager rations and driven by the fear of the whip. You learn to accept the pain, to push past the limits of exhaustion, to simply endure. Because in ancient Egyptian tomb construction, the discipline wasn't just about getting the job done. It was about asserting total control, ensuring that every ounce of your being, every drop of your sweat, every gasp of your breath, was dedicated to the pharaoh's eternal glory. And you, a nameless individual in a sea of bodies, become a testament to that unyielding power. You felt the bite of the sun, the sting of the dust, and the lash of the overseer. You've endured the quarry's dust, the block's brutal weight, and the whip's cruel persuasion. Yet, amidst all these external threats, a more insidious enemy constantly preys on the workforce: sickness, injury, and death. In ancient Egypt, without modern medicine, hygiene, or safety protocols, your body is a fragile vessel constantly under siege. Imagine the daily toll on your body. Every muscle aches, every joint protests. Your hands, perpetually cut and bruised from handling rough stone and thick ropes, are open invitations for infection. A small cut, left untended in this unsanitary environment, quickly festers. Pus, swelling, fever, these are common occurrences. Without antibiotics, even a minor infection could become a life-threatening ordeal, leading to gangrene and often amputation if you were lucky enough to have a skilled practitioner, or more likely, a slow, agonizing death. Mainstream historical fact: skeletal remains from ancient Egyptian worker cemeteries show high incidences of trauma, osteoarthritis, and signs of various infections, reflecting the harsh physical demands and dangers of their labor. Broken bones are a grim badge of honor or often a death sentence. A fall from a ramp, a misstep while hauling, a rock slide in the quarry. These incidents could instantly shatter a leg, an arm, or crush your torso. Setting a complex fracture back then was rudimentary at best. You'd be splinted with rough wood and left to heal if you could. The slightest misalignment could lead to lifelong disability, leaving you unable to work and therefore unable to earn your meager rations. Historians still argue about the quality of medical care available to the common laborer. While ancient Egyptian medicine was advanced for its time, with surgeons capable of setting bones and even performing trepanations, access to such high-level care for the general workforce was likely limited. You'd probably get the village bone setter, whose skills might be more folklore than fact. Beyond acute injuries, chronic conditions plague the workers. Your lungs, constantly inhaling stone dust, slowly succumb to silicosis, a disease that would eventually suffocate you. You'd see older workers gasping for breath, their faces gray, their energy utterly spent. Your teeth, constantly chewing gritty bread, wear down, crack, and become infected, leading to painful abscesses and eventual tooth loss. This would make eating already a chore, an agony. A quirky tidbit: mummified remains have often shown severe dental wear, sometimes with pulp exposure, suggesting painful and persistent dental issues were common, even among the elite, let alone the laborers. Imagine a constant toothache with no painkillers, ever. Diseases thrive in the cramped, unsanitary living conditions. Dysentery, spread by contaminated food and water, sweeps through the worker camps like wildfire. You'd experience debilitating cramps, relentless diarrhea, and rapid dehydration. Cholera, typhoid, and other waterborne illnesses are ever-present threats, turning your bowels into a battlefield. You'd see dozens, perhaps hundreds, succumb to these invisible enemies, their bodies racked by fever and convulsions. Flies, ubiquitous and buzzing, move from open latrines to your meager food, acting as vectors for countless pathogens. Eye infections caused by the constant dust and lack of hygiene are common, sometimes leading to blindness. Skin infections, rashes, and parasites are also rampant. You'd probably itch constantly, but scratching would only make it worse, breaking the skin and inviting further infection. One light joke: your idea of a clean shirt would just be one with fewer active insect colonies. Sleep deprivation is another silent killer. The hard ground, the cramped quarters, the persistent aches, the constant fear, all conspire against restful sleep. Your body doesn't get the chance to repair itself, leading to chronic fatigue, slower reflexes, and an increased susceptibility to accidents and illness. You're always running on empty, your mental faculties dulled by exhaustion. The life expectancy for a laborer on these projects was significantly lower than for other segments of society. The relentless physical demands, the constant exposure to hazards, the poor diet, and the lack of proper medical care conspired to create a grim prognosis. Many workers would simply disappear, their bodies either buried in unmarked graves at the site or simply left where they fell, quickly reclaimed by the desert sands. There's no official record of your passing, no eulogy, no pension plan for your surviving family. You are simply replaced, Historians still argue about the exact mortality rates on these construction projects. While direct evidence is scarce, the sheer scale of the work, combined with the known health issues of the time, suggests that thousands of lives were undoubtedly lost in the creation of these eternal monuments. For you, this isn't statistics. It's the grim reality you see every day. A friend collapsing, a cough that worsens, a cut that won't heal. Death is a constant presence, a shadow lurking just beyond the edge of your peripheral vision. You learn to steel yourself, to compartmentalize, to simply push on. There's no time for grieving, no energy for profound sorrow. Your own survival takes precedence. You become acutely aware of the fragility of life and the brutal indifference of the ancient world. Every sunrise is a small victory, another day survived in a world designed to break you. And every night, as you lie on the hard ground, you pray for the strength to face another day, knowing that the odds are stacked against you, and that the monumental tomb you are helping to build might very well become your own, uncredited and unintended, final resting place. Having battled the elements, the overseer's whip, and the ever-present threat of injury and disease, you might feel like your physical limits are being tested to their absolute breaking point. But ancient Egyptian tomb construction didn't just break bodies. It slowly, insidiously eroded minds. The relentless grind, coupled with a pervasive culture of superstition and fear, would fill your days with dread and slowly chip away at your sanity. Imagine the sheer monotony. Day after day, the same tasks. Hammering, hauling, chipping. The same gritty bread, the same sour beer. The same scorching sun. There are no weekends, no holidays, no distractions beyond the grim camaraderie of shared suffering. Your world shrinks to the immediate task, the next ration, the next moment of rest. This repetitive, soul-numbing labor, without any mental stimulation or prospect of improvement, is a profound psychological burden. Your thoughts become cyclical, often revolving around hunger, thirst, pain, and the overwhelming desire for the day to simply end. One light joke. You'd probably start having intense philosophical debates with a rock about the meaning of existence, and the rock would likely win. Then there's the pervasive fear, not just of the overseer's whip or of a falling stone, but of the unknown, of the spiritual forces that permeated ancient Egyptian life. These tombs aren't just buildings. They are gateways to the afterlife, sacred spaces imbued with immense power. The pharaoh himself is considered a living god, and you, a mere mortal, are building his eternal dwelling. This imbues the entire project with an aura of profound reverence, but also deep-seated fear. Ancient Egyptian religion was complex, filled with countless deities, spirits, and spells. You would be aware of the rituals performed by priests, the offerings made to placate the gods, and the elaborate burial rites designed to ensure the pharaoh's journey to the do-it, the underworld. This constant exposure to the sacred, while working in such profane and brutal conditions, could be deeply unsettling. You might worry about offending a god, about inadvertently cursing yourself or your family through some unknown transgression. A slip of the chisel, a moment of weakness, could it be interpreted as divine displeasure? These thoughts would gnaw at you, adding a layer of spiritual anxiety to your already immense physical burdens. A quirky tidbit. Ancient Egyptians were highly superstitious, believing in protective amulets, good and bad omens, and the power of curses. Tomb workers, particularly those involved in the inner chambers, might have feared tomb curses not just as a Hollywood trope, but as a very real, tangible threat. Any sickness or accident could easily be attributed to a vengeful spirit or an offended deity. This means every ache, every cut, every moment of bad luck could be magnified into a sign of divine retribution. The darkness inside the tomb chambers themselves would add another dimension of fear. Working deep within the earth, by the flickering, smoke-filled light of oil lamps, would be claustrophobic and unsettling. The air is stale, heavy. Strange echoes distort sounds. You might hear noises in the darkness that trigger primal fears. Whispers, scuttling sounds, the sense of unseen presences. Remember, you're building a home for the dead, a place where spirits would reside. Even the most hardened laborer would feel a shiver down their spine in the deeper, unlit passages. Mainstream historical fact: many tomb chambers were indeed carved deep into rock, often accessed by vertical shafts or long, winding corridors, requiring artificial light for workers. The conditions within these confined spaces would have been incredibly challenging, both physically and psychologically. The pervasive heat, dust, and constant exhaustion also play tricks on the mind. Dehydration can cause hallucinations, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. Sleep deprivation leads to disorientation, irritability, and a general decline in cognitive function. You might find yourself staring blankly at a wall for minutes, unable to focus, your mind a foggy mess. These mental breaks, however brief, are dangerous. They can lead to mistakes which, as you know, can have lethal consequences. Historians still argue about the psychological impact of such monumental labor on the ancient Egyptian workforce. While some emphasize the unifying effect of shared national projects and religious fervor, others contend that the sheer brutality and coercive nature of the work must have led to widespread psychological distress, despair, and a sense of hopelessness among the common laborers. For you, it's not a debate. It's your daily reality. You see the haunted eyes of your companions, the blank stares, the sudden outbursts of frustration, followed by quiet resignation. You might try to escape into your own thoughts, to conjure memories of home, of family, of a simpler life. But even those memories might be tinged with the bitterness of knowing how far you are from them, how unlikely it is you'll ever return. The very act of dreaming of a better life could become a torment. The constant pressure to perform, combined with the lack of agency, leads to a profound sense of powerlessness. Your life is not your own. Your body is not your own. Your future is not your own. This loss of control is deeply unsettling, eroding your sense of identity. You become just another pair of hands, a nameless body, serving a purpose far larger than yourself, a purpose you might not even fully understand or believe in. You might start to feel like a zombie, just going through the motions, your spirit slowly leaving your body long before your actual death. This mental torment, this psychological attrition, is as draining as any physical labor. It chips away at your resilience, making you more susceptible to illness, more prone to accidents, and less likely to find joy in anything. The ancient Egyptian tomb construction wasn't just a feat of engineering. It was a profound human experiment in endurance, pushing bodies and minds to the brink, forging monuments of eternal stone from the fleeting lives and shattered psyches of its builders. And as you lay down at night, staring at the unseen ceiling of your cramped hut, you might just find yourself wishing for the sweet oblivion of sleep, hoping it might offer a temporary escape from the relentless grind of reality and the haunting specters of your own mind. You've learned that the pharaoh's tomb extracts a heavy toll in sweat, blood, and sanity. But as if the sun, the stone, and the lash weren't enough, you now face another pervasive and often deadly challenge: scarcity. Specifically, the scarcity of vital resources like food and water, which transforms daily survival into a desperate, cutthroat game. And when desperation sets in, rules become flexible, leading to the dangerous gamble of thievery, often met with severe, brutal consequences. Imagine a world where every morsel of food, every sip of water, is meticulously rationed. Your daily allocation of gritty bread and thick beer is barely enough to sustain the grueling physical labor you endure. Hunger is not just an occasional pang. It's a constant, gnawing presence, a dull ache in your stomach that never truly goes away. You learn to savor every crumb, to guard your rations with a fierce protectiveness. Mainstream historical fact: workers on monumental projects like the pyramids were provided with rations of grain for bread and beer, onions, and occasionally dried fish, but these were often just subsistence level, designed to provide enough energy for labor, not comfort or abundance. Water, as you've bitterly learned, is even more precious. It's hauled from the Nile or distant wells, often in pottery jars, and its supply is tenuous. A disrupted supply chain, a broken jar, or simply an exceptionally hot day could mean reduced rations, pushing you to the brink of severe dehydration. You feel the constant dryness in your mouth, the headache throbbing behind your eyes, the dizzying lightheadedness that comes with insufficient fluids. Your body screams for relief, a sensation far more insistent and debilitating than mere hunger. This constant scarcity creates an environment ripe for desperation. When your body is pushed to its limits, when hunger gnaws and thirst burns, the temptation to take what you need, rather than suffer, becomes overwhelming. You witness it around you. A quick hand snatching a piece of bread from an unattended pile, a furtive gulp of water from a neighbor's jar, a discreet pilfering of a handful of onions. These are not acts of malicious greed, but often desperate attempts at self-preservation. But the consequences of such desperate acts are severe. Theft, even of a meager ration, is viewed as a direct threat to the meticulously balanced, hierarchical system that keeps the project running. It destabilizes order, fosters mistrust, and ultimately undermines the efficiency of the workforce. Overseers and camp guards are vigilant, their eyes constantly sweeping for such transgressions. A quick light joke: you'd probably develop a special stealth shuffle that makes no noise, allowing you to creep up on an unguarded loaf of bread like a desert ninja. If caught, the punishment for thievery is swift and brutal. It's not just a verbal reprimand. You could face a public flogging, far more severe than those for laziness, leaving you scarred and incapacitated. Or, more gruesomely, you could have a hand or a foot mutilated or even cut off, rendering you permanently unable to work, a fate often worse than death in this society, as it meant an agonizing, slow demise by starvation and exposure. A quirky tidbit: ancient Egyptian legal texts, though mostly from later periods, often describe harsh punishments for theft, including beatings, forced labor, and mutilation, reflecting the severity with which property crimes were viewed in a resource-scarce society. The psychological toll of living in such an environment is immense. You trust no one implicitly, not even your hutmates, for desperation can turn friends into rivals. You constantly guard your meager possessions, your eyes darting, your senses heightened. Sleep is fitful, plagued by anxieties about who might steal your precious ration while you're vulnerable. You might find yourself becoming harder, less empathetic, focused solely on your own survival. The constant struggle for basic necessities turns every day into a silent battle. Historians still argue about the frequency of theft and the effectiveness of the security measures in place at these massive worker camps. While sources mention instances of theft, the sheer size of the operations makes it difficult to gauge how widespread it was and how many went unpunished. But for you, the individual laborer, the threat is very real, and the consequences are immediate and terrifying. You learn to calculate risks, to weigh the desperate hunger against the very real possibility of losing a limb or your life. You see those who take the gamble and win, temporarily sated, and those who lose, their screams echoing across the site as punishment is meted out. This creates a powerful deterrent, forcing you to endure the hunger, to push through the thirst, rather than risk such irreversible consequences. The scarcity of resources also fuels resentment and tension among the workers. Arguments break out over perceived unfairness in rationing, over lost or stolen tools, over everything. The air is thick with unspoken grievances, adding another layer of stress to an already unbearable existence. You're constantly on edge, not just from the work, but from the fear of being robbed or from the temptation to rob another. This relentless struggle for basic sustenance defines your days, making any higher aspirations seem ridiculously out of reach. Your world is reduced to a primitive, visceral fight for survival, where the most basic human needs are luxury, and their absence drives men to desperate acts. You are a prisoner of your hunger and your thirst, forever balancing the demands of your body against the brutal laws of the pharaoh's world. And as you gaze at the colossal, unyielding stones you helped to build, you realize that their permanence comes at the cost of your fleeting, fragile life, consumed not just by the work, but by the relentless, all-consuming fear of deprivation and the dire consequences of seeking relief. So you've survived the sun, the stone, the lash, and the gnawing hunger. You've seen men break physically and mentally. Now let's talk about the skilled work, the artistry that gives these tombs their eternal beauty, the painting, the relief carving, the detailed hieroglyphs. While it might sound like a reprieve from the brutal manual labor, even this supposedly finer work comes with its own set of hidden hazards, from toxic pigments to cramped, airless spaces. If you're lucky enough to be assigned to this kind of work, you're probably no longer the lowest tier laborer. You might have shown some artistic aptitude, or perhaps you're assisting a master craftsman. This means your hands are now wielding brushes and finer chisels, not just massive mallets. You're working on the interior walls of the tomb, often deep underground, far from the light and heat of the surface, but trading one set of miseries for another. Imagine working in a confined chamber, perhaps only lit by the flickering, smoky flame of an oil lamp. The air is stale, thick with the smell of plaster, stone dust, and the pungent odor of various pigments. There's no ventilation, no fresh air circulating. You're breathing in everything. Fine particles of gypsum and limestone from the smooth walls, and, more dangerously, the dust from the minerals used to make the paints. Mainstream historical fact: ancient Egyptian artists used mineral pigments like red and yellow ochre, iron oxides, malachite, copper carbonate for green, azurite, copper carbonate for blue, and charcoal for black. These pigments were ground into fine powders and mixed with a binding agent, often animal glue or egg white. Many of these pigments, while beautiful, are toxic. For instance, malachite and azurite contain copper, which can be harmful if inhaled or ingested over long periods. More dangerously, some blues were made from ground lapis lazuli, expensive, but also contain sulfur or, later, from Egyptian blue, a synthetic pigment, calcium copper silicate, whose production could involve hazardous materials. And while they didn't use lead white as widely as later civilizations, any trace metals from unpurified minerals could still be problematic. You're essentially breathing in finely powdered heavy metals. A quirky tidbit: while not commonly used in tomb painting, ancient Egyptians also developed a method for creating a vibrant yellow pigment from orpiment, which is arsenic trisulfide, incredibly toxic if ingested or inhaled. Imagine the constant low-level poisoning. You probably wouldn't feel the effects immediately, but over years your health would slowly, insidiously decline, leading to kidney issues, neurological problems, or various cancers, none of which they could explain in ancient Egypt. The working conditions themselves are challenging. You're often contorting your body into awkward positions to reach high ceilings or low walls, painting by the dim, flickering light of a lamp that constantly needs refilling and provides minimal visibility. The soot from the lamps further fouls the air, irritating your eyes and coating your skin. Your hands and clothes are perpetually stained with vibrant, but potentially poisonous, colors. You'd probably look like a human rainbow, just a very tired, poisoned one. One light joke: your colleagues might start jokingly calling you blue lung or green finger, without realizing how morbidly accurate those nicknames actually are. The meticulous detail required means immense eye strain. Hours spent focusing on tiny brushstrokes, on carving delicate hieroglyphs, in poor lighting would quickly deteriorate your eyesight. Many ancient artists likely suffered from progressive vision loss, making their later work increasingly difficult and dangerous. Imagine trying to thread a needle in near darkness for 8 hours a day every day. Historians still argue about the exact composition of all pigments and their long-term health effects on the artisans. While some pigments like ochre are relatively harmless, others would undoubtedly have contributed to chronic illnesses among those who worked with them extensively. The question is how well the Egyptians understood these hazards, if at all. For you, the artist laborer, it's not about scientific understanding. It's about the constant headache, the persistent cough, the unexplainable aches in your joints, and the creeping weariness that makes every stroke a monumental effort. Beyond the paint, the preparation of the walls involves applying layers of plaster and smoothing them. This creates another layer of fine dust. If you're involved in carving reliefs, you're still using chisels, albeit smaller ones, creating more stone dust in the enclosed space. The echoes of your tools chipping away at the stone would amplify in the confined chambers, adding to the claustrophobic atmosphere. The pressure for perfection is immense. These are sacred images, designed to ensure the pharaoh's eternal life. A mistake isn't just an error, it's a blasphemy, a potential threat to the pharaoh's spiritual journey. You would be working under the watchful eye of master artists, and any deviation or imperfection could lead to severe punishment, perhaps even removal from this relatively privileged work and a return to the open-air brutal manual labor. So, while you might not be breaking your back dragging stones, you are slowly poisoning yourself, straining your eyes, and working in conditions that are silently, insidiously killing you. The beauty you create is breathtaking, but the cost is profound. Your legacy, unseen and uncredited, lies in the vibrant colors and intricate details that have survived millennia, telling the story of a pharaoh's journey. Your personal story, however, ends with a slow decline, a testament to the hidden dangers lurking even in the seemingly skilled and artistic corners of ancient Egyptian tomb construction. You might be making beautiful things, but you're doing it with 1 foot already in your own, much smaller, unpainted tomb. You've battled heat, dust, hunger, the whip, illness, and even the subtle poisons of artistry. Yet, for all its life-giving properties, the very backbone of ancient Egypt, the mighty Nile, also presents its own set of terrifying and immediate dangers for anyone working on its banks or relying on its waters. You quickly learn that the gift of the Nile can also be its curse, bringing treacherous floods and lurking, toothy predators. Imagine working near the river, perhaps at a loading dock where massive stone blocks are being offloaded from barges, or at a temporary camp set up during a high Nile season. The river, while vital, is also a force of nature, unpredictable and awe-inspiring. Mainstream historical fact: the annual flooding of the Nile was crucial for ancient Egyptian agriculture, depositing fertile silt. However, these floods were also unpredictable in their intensity and timing, sometimes bringing devastating consequences if too high or too low. A higher than usual inundation meant the river could overflow its banks, sweeping away temporary structures, tools, and even unwary workers. One light joke: you might develop a new phobia of sudden gurgling sounds, or anything that remotely resembles a particularly large log floating by. The ground near the river can be soft, muddy, and treacherous, especially after a flood recedes. Heavy stones, already unstable on their sledges, could sink into the mire, requiring even more backbreaking effort to extract them. Footing is constantly precarious, and a slip could send you tumbling into the murky depths. You learn to watch your step, to be acutely aware of the shifting ground beneath you. But the most terrifying danger isn't the water itself, or the mud. It's what lives in the water. The Nile was, and still is, home to one of the most formidable predators on the planet, the Nile crocodile. These apex predators, some growing to over 16 feet long and weighing half a ton, were a very real and constant threat. They are ambush hunters, blending seamlessly with the muddy banks and water, waiting for an unsuspecting victim to come within range. A quick splash, a sudden lunge, and you could be dragged beneath the surface, your fate sealed in a tangle of scales and teeth. A quirky tidbit: ancient Egyptians both revered and feared crocodiles, sometimes mummifying them or dedicating temples to Sobuk, the crocodile god, in an attempt to appease them and gain protection. For you, the laborer, such religious practices offer little comfort when you're just trying to get a drink of water from the riverbank. You'd be constantly vigilant near the water's edge. Every ripple, every disturbance on the surface would send a jolt of fear through you. You'd learn never to approach the river alone, always to be in a group, and to stay well away from reedy areas where a crocodile could easily hide. Even collecting water in jars from the riverbank becomes a high-stakes gamble. The thought of reaching down and feeling those cold, scaly jaws clamp around your arm is a recurring nightmare. Beyond crocodiles, hippopotamuses, though perhaps less common near the main construction sites, were also incredibly dangerous. Despite their seemingly docile appearance, they are territorial and notoriously aggressive, capable of overturning boats and attacking humans with lethal force. Though less of a direct threat than crocodiles for a land-based worker, any journey by boat on the Nile meant acknowledging their immense power. Historians still argue about the exact frequency of fatal encounters with Nile predators for the average laborer. While direct statistics are scarce, the presence of these animals was a known hazard of life along the Nile, and it's highly probable that many unrecorded deaths and injuries occurred, adding to the grim tally of lives consumed by the pharaohs' monumental projects. For you, it's not a historical footnote. It's the reason you glance nervously at every shadow on the riverbank. Then there are the less dramatic, but equally insidious, dangers related to the river. Mosquitoes, breeding in stagnant pools left by receding floods, carry diseases like malaria, which would induce debilitating fevers, chills, and weakness, further sapping your already depleted strength and making you even more vulnerable to other illnesses or accidents. The Nile might be the source of life, but it's also a breeding ground for countless pathogens. Even the fish in the Nile, a crucial food source, could pose a threat if not properly prepared, or if they harbored parasites. You learned quickly which fish were safe to eat and how to clean them thoroughly, a skill born of necessity. Any foodborne illness in your already weakened state could be fatal. The very landscape shaped by the Nile is also a hazard. Mud brick structures, while quick to build, are vulnerable to prolonged heavy rains or unexpected surges in the river. A sudden downpour could turn the construction site into a muddy quagmire, making it impossible to work and creating even more unstable ground. Your small, cramped mud brick hut, designed to keep out the sun, offered little protection against truly heavy rain, potentially collapsing and burying you while you slept. So, while the desert and the quarry are brutal, the life-giving Nile adds its own unique, terrifying layer of risk to your existence as a tomb builder. You are constantly on edge, caught between the need to access its life-sustaining waters and the very real dangers that lurk within its depths and along its banks. The sound of a splash, a rustle in the reeds, the sudden rise of the water level, all are reminders that even in the heart of civilization, primal nature asserts its terrifying dominion, demanding its own share of sacrifice for the glory of the pharaoh. You might manage to outwit the overseer or avoid a falling rock, but you can't argue with the jaws of a crocodile. You've endured the sun, the stone, the lash, hunger, toxins, and even the toothy perils of the Nile. But there's one pervasive, inescapable reality of ancient Egyptian life that, while less dramatic than a crocodile attack, is far more constant and insidious: filth. Primitive sanitation meant that waste, disease, and pests were an unavoidable part of your daily existence, making any semblance of hygiene an impossible dream and turning your living and working spaces into breeding grounds for illness. Imagine your living situation. Your cramped mud-brick hut, shared with a dozen other men, lacks any form of plumbing or drainage. There's no toilet, no running water, no sewer system. Human waste, food scraps, and general refuse accumulate in and around the workers' village. Mainstream historical fact: urban and residential areas in ancient Egypt generally lacked sophisticated sanitation infrastructure, with waste often discarded in pits, on streets, or near dwellings. For a temporary worker camp, this problem would have been even more acute due to the dense population and lack of permanent facilities. The stench would be overwhelming, a constant, nauseating mix of stale sweat, unwashed bodies, human and animal waste, and rotting food. The air itself feels thick with it, making every breath a grim reminder of your squalid surroundings. You learn to breathe through your mouth, to try and ignore the pervasive stink, but it's like trying to ignore the sun. It's always there, an oppressive, invisible blanket. One light joke: you'd probably develop a talent for holding your breath for surprisingly long periods just to get through meal times or, well, existing. And where there is waste, there are pests. Flies, drawn by the filth, are everywhere. They buzz around your face, land on your food, crawl over your skin. They are not just an annoyance. They are vectors for disease, carrying bacteria from human waste directly to your mouth. You swat at them constantly, but it's a futile battle. Mosquitoes, breeding in stagnant water sources, add their incessant whine and their itchy, disease-carrying bites. A quirky tidbit: ancient Egyptians did suffer from a variety of parasitic diseases, like schistosomiasis, bilharzia, spread by snails in water, and intestinal worms, often due to poor sanitation and contaminated water. So, your internal ecosystem probably has more inhabitants than your hut. Rats and mice are also constant companions, scuttling through the huts at night, attracted by the meager food stores. They contaminate food, spread fleas, and carry diseases. Snakes and scorpions, too, are drawn to the warmth and shelter of human habitation, posing a direct threat, especially after dark. You learn to shake out your sandals before putting them on, a habit born of painful experience. You're living in a veritable zoo of disease-carrying critters, all of them vying for a piece of your meager existence. Access to clean water, as you've discovered, is severely limited. What little water is available is often drawn from the Nile, which, despite being the source of life, also carried silt, pollutants, and human waste. Drinking this water, even after it's settled, means ingesting a constant low dose of bacteria and parasites, contributing to chronic gastrointestinal distress, dysentery, and other waterborne illnesses. There's no filtration system, no purification tablets. You drink what you're given and hope for the best. Personal hygiene is almost non-existent. You might get a chance for a rudimentary wash in a communal trough, or a quick dip in the Nile if close enough, but bathing with soap or cleaning your clothes regularly is simply not possible. Your linen kilt becomes stiff with grime, sweat, and dust, a second skin of filth. Your hair becomes matted, your skin perpetually grimy and irritated. You'd likely be covered in sores, rashes, and insect bites, all prone to infection. Historians still argue about the precise impact of sanitation on public health in ancient Egypt. While some advanced communities might have had better systems, worker camps were undoubtedly breeding grounds for disease, directly contributing to high mortality rates. The sheer logistics of managing waste for thousands of people without modern technology were insurmountable, leading to endemic health problems among the laborers. For you, this isn't an academic debate. It's the reason you perpetually feel unwell, the cause of your constant stomach cramps, and the reason you rarely feel truly clean. The cycle is relentless. Poor sanitation leads to pests, which spread disease, which weakens the workers, making them less productive and more susceptible to further illness and injury. The constant battle against unseen pathogens, combined with the physical demands and lack of nutrition, slowly but surely wears down your body's defenses, leading to a grim inevitability. This pervasive filth and disease adds another layer of misery to your already arduous life. You don't just fight the stone. You fight the very environment you live in, an environment that is constantly trying to break you down, molecule by invisible molecule. You learn to live with the smell, the itch, the constant low-grade fever, the persistent diarrhea. It becomes your normal. You might occasionally long for the freshness of a brisk wind or the cleansing feel of pure, clean water. But those are luxuries for a different life, a different time. Here, in the shadow of the pharaohs' monument, your existence is defined by a constant, losing battle against the relentless tide of human waste and its myriad consequences, reminding you every single day that your life is cheap and your comfort utterly irrelevant. You've navigated the external dangers, the internal struggles, and the pervasive filth. But who exactly are you among the thousands toiling under the brutal Egyptian sun? Who are your companions in this monumental endeavor? The ancient Egyptian tomb builders weren't a monolithic group. You'd encounter a diverse workforce, yet your social standing or lack thereof dictated your treatment, your daily reality, and ultimately your likelihood of survival. You are but one of many unseen faces, building eternity for others. At the very top of this pyramid-building social structure were the elite architects, master scribes, and high-ranking priests who conceived the grand designs. These were individuals of immense intellect and social standing, likely living in relative comfort, far removed from the dust and sweat of the actual construction. You would probably never see them, let alone speak to them. They were the brains, the visionaries, enjoying the patronage of the pharaoh and the privileges of their station. Below them were the skilled artisans and craftsmen, the master masons, sculptors, painters, and carpenters. These were specialized workers, often living in purpose-built villages like Deir el-Medina, with better rations, living conditions, and even access to rudimentary medical care. They possessed valuable skills, passed down through generations, and were respected for their contribution. They were the ones who meticulously shaped the stone, carved the intricate reliefs, and adorned the tomb chambers with vibrant, enduring art. A quirky tidbit: workers at Deir el-Medina even engaged in what some historians interpret as the first recorded labor strikes in history, protesting about delayed rations. This demonstrates a degree of collective agency far beyond what you, the common laborer, could ever dream of. If you were one of these skilled artisans, your life might be a bit more tolerable, but you'd still face risks from toxic pigments or accidents. Then came the vast majority of the workforce, and this is where you, my friend, likely fit in the general laborers. Mainstream historical fact: the consensus among Egyptologists is that the massive workforce for pyramid and tomb construction primarily consisted of a combination of paid laborers and corvée, conscripted workers, often farmers drafted during the inundation season when agricultural work was impossible. This means you might have been a peasant farmer, pulled from your village fields, or perhaps a landless individual seeking the promise, however meager, of consistent food and shelter. Your status as a general laborer meant you were at the bottom of the pecking order. You were the muscle, the brute force, performing the most arduous and dangerous tasks: quarrying, dragging, lifting, and building the ramps. Your work was often unskilled, repetitive, and utterly exhausting. You were interchangeable, easily replaced if you succumbed to injury, illness, or simply sheer exhaustion. Your clothes were simple, your food basic, your living conditions squalid. You had no personal identity beyond your work gang number, no voice, and certainly no recourse against the harsh treatment of the overseers. Historians still argue about the precise demographics of this general labor force. Were they strictly male? Were women and children involved in support roles? The evidence suggests that the heaviest labor was done by men, but families might have accompanied workers, or women might have been involved in tasks like preparing food or collecting water. Regardless, for the individual male laborer, your identity was stripped away, replaced by your function in the colossal machine of tomb construction. You were a tool, a resource to be expended. You'd be part of a phyle or gang of workers, often named after a pharaoh or a concept, like enduring as Menkor or drunkards of Menkor. These groups provided a basic social unit and some sense of camaraderie, born of shared suffering. You would learn to rely on your immediate companions, to share a word or a moment of grim humor, to help pull a particularly heavy stone, or simply to commiserate over the aching pain in your muscles. Your days were punctuated by the calls of the overseers, the relentless sun, and the constant awareness of your own expendability. You were a nameless face in a sea of identical, dust-caked bodies, your personal dreams and aspirations irrelevant to the grand project. Your individual efforts were absorbed into the monumental whole, your sweat and blood literally becoming part of the pharaoh's eternal home. One light joke. You'd probably start referring to yourself in the third person, as in, this particular meat puppet is still functioning, barely. The social hierarchy was rigidly enforced. You saw the difference in treatment, the slightly better food for the skilled artisans, the relative comfort of the overseers who didn't lift a stone, the almost divine remoteness of the architects. This hierarchy reinforced your own insignificance, reminding you daily that your life was deemed less valuable, your contribution solely physical. So, when you consider why you wouldn't last a day in ancient Egyptian tomb construction, it's not just about the dangers or the hard work. It's about being an unseen face, a cog in a machine, stripped of your individuality, your comfort, and often your very humanity. You are a disposable resource, a living sacrifice on the altar of the pharaoh's immortality. Your hands shape the stone, but your name will never be etched upon it. Your life is fleeting, consumed by the construction of something truly eternal, leaving behind only the silent, monumental testament of stone and the dust of countless forgotten lives. You are the unseen, the uncredited, the unsung hero or victim of a civilization that prioritized the afterlife of its rulers above all else. You have witnessed, experienced, and perhaps even momentarily embodied the grueling reality of ancient Egyptian tomb construction. You've journeyed across the harsh landscape, endured squalid living, broken your back in the quarry, risked life and limb moving colossal stones, carefully and dangerously, carved intricate details, lived under the brutal discipline of the whip, battled sickness and injury, faced the insidious mental toll of monotony and fear, struggled against scarcity and the threat of severe punishment, contended with the hidden hazards of artistry, braved the Nile's lurking perils, and suffered the constant indignities of pervasive filth. You were one of the unseen faces, a cog in an immense, relentless machine. And now, as our journey nears its end, you face the final, profound truth of your existence as an ancient tomb builder. Your life, though fleeting, was poured into the creation of something truly eternal, a legacy that would utterly eclipse your own ephemeral existence. Imagine the final days if you were fortunate enough to survive them. The great work is nearing completion. The last blocks are hoisted into place, the final hieroglyphs are painted, the last passage is sealed. There's a palpable, almost desperate sense of accomplishment, mingled with the profound weariness of years, perhaps decades of unrelenting toil. You've poured your lifeblood into this colossal edifice, watching it rise from the desert floor, a man-made mountain reaching for the heavens. Mainstream historical fact: the construction of the larger pyramids and tombs often took decades, spanning the reigns of multiple pharaohs, meaning many laborers would spend the entirety of their working lives, and indeed their full adult lives, on these projects. Your hands, once soft, are now gnarled and scarred, etched with the memory of stone and rope. Your body, once perhaps vibrant and strong, is now a testament to chronic pain, damaged lungs, and worn joints. Your eyes, once bright, are dimmed by dust and strain. You are a shadow of your former self, a living monument to the cost of eternal glory. One light joke: you'd probably feel less like a human being and more like a very, very tired, dust-covered action figure, permanently stuck in a work pose. Yet your name will never be known. No inscription, no relief carving, no papyrus scroll will bear your name or acknowledge your sacrifice. You are one of thousands, millions even, across centuries, who built these wonders without a personal legacy. The pharaoh's name, titles, and glorious deeds will be etched into the stone, painted on the walls, ensuring his immortality. Your contribution, though absolutely essential, is completely anonymous. A quirky tidbit: one of the truly rare exceptions is the workers' village at Deir el-Medina, where some individual artisans did leave behind personal records, graffiti, and even self-portraits, offering a fascinating glimpse into their more individualized lives. But for the vast majority of ordinary laborers on the Great Pyramid sites, such personal recognition was an unimaginable luxury. Historians still argue about the precise motivations for such immense, anonymous labor. Was it pure coercion, deep religious devotion, a sense of national pride, or simply the pragmatic choice for survival in a harsh landscape? For you, the answer is likely a complex, bitter cocktail of all these factors, mixed with a healthy dose of grim resignation. You did it because you had to, because there was no other choice, because the very forces of your society pushed you towards this singular, all-consuming task. As the tomb is sealed, the final rituals performed, and the pharaoh begins his eternal journey, your own journey is far from over, but profoundly changed. Perhaps you are dismissed, left to find your way back to a village that barely remembers you, or to scrounge for work in an unforgiving world. Perhaps you are too broken to move, left to die at the site, your body quickly reclaimed by the sands that swallowed so many others. Your physical existence, the fleeting spark of your life, is extinguished, leaving behind only the monumental, unyielding stone. The irony is profound. You, a mortal with a finite lifespan, have spent that life building something designed to defy time itself. Your fleeting existence, marked by pain and deprivation, stands in stark contrast to the eternal permanence of the pharaoh's tomb. You are the embodiment of human transience, while the monument you built is the symbol of ultimate eternity. When we look at the pyramids and the magnificent tombs of ancient Egypt today, we marvel at their grandeur, their precision, their engineering genius. We speak of the pharaohs, the architects, the high priests, but for a brief moment, tonight you have walked in the dust-filled sandals of the unsung heroes, or perhaps the unsung victims who made it all possible. You have felt the weight of the stone, the sting of the lash, the gnawing of hunger, and the cold indifference of a world that demanded everything and gave little in return. Your contribution, though invisible, is literally the bedrock upon which an entire civilization's legacy rests. You were the hands that shaped the eternal. You were the breath that filled the dust-laden air. You were the life, however brief and brutal, that gave rise to immortal stone. So, if you were to ask if you would last a day in ancient Egyptian tomb construction, the answer, my friend, is almost certainly no. But for tonight, you survived the story. And now, as the last grains of sand settle, and the ancient world slips back into the quiet of history, let's drift off to sleep, perhaps with a newfound appreciation for the comforts of our own fleeting, but infinitely more comfortable existence. Good night.